Good day. You are on the channel, Way of Truth. My name is Maxim Gencherov. Finally we have arrived to the most important video of this channel. Because we are going to talk about a particle, which explains everything in the world view. This particle is the atom. We're going to take apart how weird and awkward the scientists came up with the structure of the atom. We will work out the real structure of the atom, which will not be told anywhere or anytime. At the beginning I will quote Dmitry Nikolaevich Trifonov, a doctor in chemical sciences. All theories about the structure of the atom came into being with a pen and were the result of theoretical thinking and calculations. Atoms were given as a fact and filled with mathematical formulas. In other words, all structures of the atom were the result of fantasies. Like all normal people, first find the research objects and derive their properties. But with the discovery of the atom, the scientists went the way backwards, invented properties with
Сначала из головы придумали некие свойства, а потом по своим же выдуманным свойствам начали строить атом.
Which you started the construction of the atom. What is completely inadmissible in the science? See how this could happen. English physicist and chemist Dalton John proposed that everything consists of unique indivisible particles, the atom. The physicist Joseph John Thomson established the existence of the electron. According to Thomson, the electrons lay immobile on the atom. But most scientists of his time did not believe Thomson and thought that the existence of the electron does not exist. How could the smallest particle in the universe exist out of even smaller particles? It simply could not be imagined. That is why the atomic model as well as the electron was not recognized. Further to the atomic model, the British physicist Ernest Rutherford joined in. He was one of the few who believed Thomson with the existence of the electron. With his performed experiment he came to the conclusion that in the atom exists a hard particle, the atomic nucleus. You can see the refutation of Thomson and Rutherford's experiments in my other videos. The links are in the description. And now we continue. The interesting thing is that even Rutherford did not believe the results of his experiment. This is the most unbelievable thing in his life. In the magazine, Chemistry Russia, edition 4, page 20, you can see Rutherford's comment that he gave shortly after. It is not realistic, as if you shoot a 7 kilograms projectile at a piece of paper, it bounces back and hits you. This comment is even on Wikipedia. And instead of reconsidering his views on elementary particles and the atom as a whole, Rutherford left it as it is. Even created the structure of the atom on the basis of the experiment. He united his incorrect experiment with the unrecognized electron. This atomic model was called planetary. Many questions arose about the Rutherford atomic model, where it was understandable that it was not viable. Since the electron loses its energy while orbiting the atom and sooner or later it had to crash into the atomic nucleus. In reality, the atom is a constant structure and the electron did not fall into it. And instead of inventing a new workable atomic model, British physicists decided to save Rutherford's atomic model. With a sly face, one tried to explain the or other defects. Danish physics theorist Niels Bohr, Rutherford's student, tried to save his teacher's atomic model. He combined Rutherford's planetary model with Max Planck's quantum theory and introduced Planck's constant. In a nutshell, Bohr assumed that there are paths around the atomic nucleus where the electron does not lose energy. Ingenious. In his theory, there are artifacts of Bohr. The electrons move only on strict or allowed paths, and in violation of the laws of electrodynamics, the electrons do not radiate energy. When the electron jumps to a lower orbit of the atomic nucleus, it emits a photon. If the electron jumps to the higher orbit, it engulfs a photon because it has to resist the attraction of the nucleus. Bohr's theory did not inspire confidence, as even Rutherford doubted it. Rutherford did not understand how the electron, jumping from one orbit to another, could know which quantum to send. How could the electron know Bohr's postulates? This attempt by Bohr to save Rutherford's atomic model caused even more problems. Since the idea of stationary orbitals is based on quantum theory, but the calculation of these orbitals is based on classical mechanics and electrodynamics, it does not fit into the basic theory, because they contradict each other. British physicist William Henry Bragg, inventor of 10th ray analysis, accurately noted, "Assuming Bohr's theory, we should use the classical laws of physics on Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and quantum physics on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday." So this was Bohr's theory. By the way, Bohr's theory was only valid for hydrogen. For other atoms it did not work, which again proves that their theory of the atomic structure was not correct. And it comes further and further into the dead end. Instead of throwing away this flawed theory of Bohr, the scientists decided to save the In 1924, the French scientist Louis de Broglie told an idea that elementary particles can be a wave and a particle at the same time. The theory was called wave-particle duality. Of course, if your theory is at a dead end, add double standards to it, where your particles and waves can be very convenient. Something like this can hardly be called science. Let's continue. Bohr added the principle of completeness to his old theory. In the new theory, the electron does not whiz on its orbits, but is smeared on the whole orbital sphere. It exists everywhere, but with different probability. So it is impossible to determine the coordinates, as well as the trajectory motion of the electron. Nobody questions how this can be. In general, the properties of particles and waves are opposite and incompatible. Therefore, the particle cannot be wave and particle at the same time. That is not all. The question was not only about the magical electron, but also about the atomic nucleus. If two protons are in the nucleus, then Coulomb forces should repel them. Japanese physicist Hideki Yukawa assumed that there are apparent or virtual particles with which protons can change each other and with which protons can be close to each other. Ingenious, virtual particles. This is how our atom came into being. Throughout the process of creating our atomic model, many questions arose, and in answering these questions, even more difficult questions arose. Understanding that this can go on forever, they decided to end it with virtual particles and double standards that contradict each other. What can we say in conclusion? They work well. Now we look in detail at the table of Mendel. Because this is closely connected with the structure of the atom. Should actually. Were you not interested in why there is no periodicity in the periodic table? If periodicity exists, then the system is subject to mathematization. This is not the case of the periodic table at all. Conductors and semiconductors are scattered. Empty fields exist in the table. SPDF elements are also scattered. For example, if we take the element oxygen, which is considered to have two valences, it is, for whatever reason, in the 6-valence series. The only thing that can be found that follows the legal rules is the increasing atomic mass of the elements. Even here there are irregularities. How could it happen that the metal like lithium or beryllium is lighter than the gas nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine or neon? Now comes the moment you have been waiting for so long. I give you the alternative variant of the atomic structure and coherently the periodic table of the elements. All atoms consist of the atomic basic substance, and if one basic substance compresses into another basic substance, then a new atom is created, such as helium or oxygen. Here, everything works according to the principle of the Matryoshka, in that one basic substance is put into another. This is what the atoms look like in 3D. Oxygen. Aluminum. Copper. Now let's look at the table of atoms. Desirably, we first look at the periodic system of atoms. With each stanza, the atoms double. All atoms have a lower and upper index. Per column the upper index increases by 1 and per row the lower index doubles. On the basis of the upper and lower numbers the atoms build up. As you already noticed, the following atom is denser than the previous one. This means that the atoms are also periodic in their density. The atomic weight is equal to the atomic density. The denser the atom, the heavier it is. Let's move on. All simple gases lie strictly in a column and have a peculiar structure different from the other atoms. All semiconductors, conductors and magnetic conductors are in the same way in their own column and have a characterized structure. The table is periodic in many parameters and is closely related to the structure of the atom. What cannot be said about Mendel's table, where there is no connection or periodicity? Such a structure was first published and brought to the public in 1997 by Russian scientist Yuri Stepanovich. He also has many inventions which are patented all over the world. He built his inventions on the basis of his atomic model. Everything said proves not only in theory, but also in practice. You can find more details about this atomic model on the website vcrod.com or on his YouTube channel. Link is in the description. At the end I want to show you something interesting. At the end of the 20th century, certain signs appeared in the fields. We are not going to elaborate who did this or what for. We will only look at one thing that is already known to us. One can behave differently to the today's atom model or periodic table. Each information one must examine exactly, so that one does not run into the trap. But one thing I know for sure, that today's atomic structure cannot be correct, because it consists completely of assumptions, fantasy and double standards, as well as contradictory and incompatible theories. I think that every person should hear the truth, whether he accepts it or not is up to him. Subscribe. Because together we are strong. With you was Maxim Gensharov.